I always thought the worst betrayals came with shouting, a slammed door, a stinging insult, a final scream. But not this one. This one came with a smile. "You're such a blessing, Judith," Emily would say as she slid the check into her purse. "We couldn't do any of this without you." Any of this apparently meant Caleb's private school tuition, piano lessons, healthy lunches, even a speech therapist. My grandson was bright, brilliant really, but sensitive. Emily always said he needed extra support, and I believed her. I mean, how could I not? She's his mother. My son Marcus never said much about the money. He'd changed since marrying Emily. Quieter, more cautious, always careful not to contradict her in front of me. I figured life was just wearing him thin. He was working 2 jobs after all. That's what Emily said. "He's exhausted, Judith, just trying to make ends meet. That's why your help means so much." And so, every month, like clockwork, I transferred $4,000 out of my pension. Left me with $2,200, enough for bills, groceries, and a few quiet luxuries. I didn't need much. My world had shrunk since Harold died. Caleb and my little garden were what kept me going. But then came the shoes. Emily showed up one Sunday in heels so glossy they could blind a pilot. I complimented them because that's what you do and you're raised to be polite. "Oh, they're just something I picked up during a little trip to Vegas," she said, sipping her mimosa. "You know, just to reset. Self-care, right?" Vegas? When did she go to Vegas? I thought she was at a school board conference. I laughed it off at the time. But the next few weeks, little things kept piling up. A new espresso machine on their kitchen counter. Caleb telling me they ordered sushi 3 nights in a row. A new iPad for homework. One day I was at the grocery store when I spotted Shirley, Emily's mother, in the wine aisle, gabbing loudly on the phone. "Oh, honey, Emily's got it made," she said, flipping her platinum bob. "That old bat pays for everything, school, bills, even Emily's spa days. She calls it tuition support. Can you believe it?" I didn't say a word. I didn't confront her. I just turned the corner, parked my cart behind the detergent aisle, and let myself feel it. The sickening swirl of betrayal, rage, and the heaviest kind of shame. Not just because I'd been lied to, but because I had wanted to believe them. That night, I started a new notebook. Not for gardening or recipes like the others. This one was for Emily, for truth. Every charge I saw on our shared grocery app that didn't make sense, wrote it down. Every time Caleb mentioned eating fast food after school when he was supposed to be at piano, logged it. I took photos, screenshots. I called the school. Actually, the secretary said, "Caleb hasn't been in the enrichment program for over a month. We sent home a form." They must have tossed it, or hidden it from Marcus. Or maybe Marcus knew. That was the part that kept me up at night. The real crack came 2 weeks later. I was walking past a park near their house when I saw Caleb. Backpack on, alone, crossing the street without looking. I panicked, ran toward him. "Caleb, where's your mom?" He looked confused. "At the gym. I walk home now." 6 years old. I walked him home myself and sat in my car, hands gripping the wheel so hard they shook. When Emily arrived an hour later in tight leggings and full makeup, I knew. I knew. I followed her the next day. I'm not proud of it. But I did. I parked a few spots down from the gym and waited, and waited. And then she emerged. Not with a yoga mat, but with a man in a sleeveless hoodie. He kissed her before they got into his car. It wasn't a gym session, it was a rendezvous. I took photos. That night, I contacted a lawyer. "Do you want to press charges, Iwa?" she asked. "Not yet," I said. "First, I want to see who my son really is." And so I waited. Caleb's birthday was coming up. I would host, like always. The whole family would be there. And if Marcus really didn't know, then he'd see. If he did know, then he'd have to choose. Between a liar with a wine glass and a woman who raised him from nothing. I spent the 2 weeks before Caleb's birthday preparing like I always did, baking his favorite chocolate cake from scratch, stringing up dinosaur decorations I knew he still loved even if he pretended he didn't, and polishing the good silver. But this time, I wasn't just preparing for a party. I was staging a reckoning. The guest list hadn't changed. Marcus and Emily would come with Caleb. Shirley would no doubt appear in something with sequins and too much perfume. I invited my neighbor, Doris, to act as an extra pair of eyes, one who knew exactly what I'd found. And I asked my lawyer, Colleen, to stop by, just for a slice of cake. Colleen knew how to smile while sharpening knives. I kept the photos printed but hidden in my purse. I had voice recordings too, from Caleb innocently explaining his mom was usually at the gym with Uncle Darren, to the school administrator confirming Caleb hadn't had therapy in weeks. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to accuse. I was going to let the truth sit in the middle of the room until it stank so badly that no one could ignore it. The doorbell rang at 2 p.m. sharp. Caleb flew into my arms, warm and bubbly and completely unaware. He loved the cake. He loved the dinosaur party hats. He loved that I gave him a handmade scrapbook filled with photos of our garden days. And then Emily walked in, arms full of faux designer bags and a too-practiced smile. "You've outdone yourself, Judith," she said, kissing the air near my cheek. As always. Marcus was quieter than ever, hugging me briefly and then disappearing into his phone. Lunch passed in awkward waves. Shirley arrived last and loudest, plopping herself down at the table like she was settling into a throne. "I brought champagne," she declared, ignoring the fact that I never served alcohol at Caleb's parties. Colleen arrived a few minutes later, wearing a cardigan and holding a file folder like it was part of the dessert tray. I stood up, smiling. "I have a little something before we do presents," I said, voice steady. "A photo show." I hooked my phone up to the TV and clicked open a folder titled Emily's Self-Care. The first image was of Emily exiting Darren's car. The second, her with Darren's arm around her waist, laughing. The third, Caleb, walking home alone with his backpack nearly sliding off his shoulder. Emily's face drained faster than the champagne bottle Shirley had opened. "What is this?" she said, voice brittle. "A slideshow," I said, "of where the pension money went." Marcus looked up sharply. "Mom!" But I wasn't finished. I played the voice recordings, one by one. Emily trying to explain away charges on the shared account. The school explaining that Caleb's therapy had ended weeks ago due to non-payment. And finally, Caleb himself saying, "Mom says I walk home now because she needs gym time to stay pretty for Darren." The room was frozen. Then Marcus stood up, slow and shaky. He looked at Emily, then at me. "Is this true?" Emily opened her mouth, closed it, then tried again. "It's not what it looks like." "Then explain it," I said calmly. "I've been paying for a lie, and if you knew about this too, Marcus, then you've been living off that lie." Marcus's face crumpled. But Emily hardened. "You think this is some kind of gotcha moment? You think you're the only one who's ever helped her family? I've sacrificed Judith. I raised your grandson. I made sure your son didn't fall apart after Harold died. You think you can just embarrass me and fix everything?" "No," I said, "but I can stop paying for it." I turned to Marcus. "I'm cutting the support, starting today. The account is closed. Caleb's education? If you want help, it comes through a trust with receipts. And as for custody, well, I've talked to a lawyer. So unless you want your son to grow up walking home alone while his mom cheats with some guy named Darren, you'll need to think carefully." Emily stood up, rage in her eyes. "You can't take my son away from me." I met her glare with steel of my own. "You already did." Emily stormed out first. No goodbye, no explanation, just a clatter of heels and the sharp slam of the front door. The champagne bottle tipped over in her wake, dripping onto my tablecloth. Fitting, I thought. Even her exits left stains. Marcus stayed, silent, pale. He didn't touch his cake. Caleb sat beside him, picking the frosting off his slice and humming a tune to himself, blissfully unaware of the emotional shrapnel hanging in the air. Colleen, bless her, stood up and handed me a discreet folder. "Call me tomorrow, Judith. We'll draft the paperwork together. You have more options than you think." She gave Marcus a glance, neutral, assessing, then turned to Caleb and smiled. "Happy birthday, kiddo. That's one heck of a cake." She left with the same calm energy she'd come in with, folding her cardigan over her arm like a general laying down arms after a well-won battle. After the last guest trickled out, Marcus finally spoke. "I didn't know," he said, eyes still locked on the tablecloth, at the champagne stain soaking through. "I swear to you, Mom, I didn't know about Darren. I didn't know she lied about the school." I didn't answer right away. I walked to the sink, poured myself a glass of water, and stared out the window at the backyard. The garden had begun to bloom again, small promises of rebirth. "Did you at least wonder?" I asked. He hesitated. I noticed she seemed distant, but I thought it was stress. Caleb's been struggling. I didn't want to push. "You were working 2 jobs, or so I was told." "I was," he said quickly, "but the second one was cut in February. She told me not to worry. Said she'd figured out the bills. I didn't realize that meant bleeding you dry." That cracked me. My voice shook more than I wanted it to. "Marcus, I gave you everything. After your father died, I worked nights tutoring just so you could go on field trips. I canceled my travel plans, my retirement goals, everything, because you and Caleb were the most important thing in the world, and I thought I was helping." "You were," he said, almost a whisper. "No, I was enabling," I said, "and I see that now." He looked up at me, and for a moment I saw my little boy again, the one who used to run into my arms after school, muddy shoes and all. But then I saw the man who let this happen, who turned a blind eye and handed over his spine to a woman who wore manipulation like perfume. "I'm going to make this right," he said, standing. "I'll move out with Caleb. I'll file for divorce. And if you're willing, I'd still like your help. Not your money, your help." For Caleb, I nodded slowly. "Then start by getting a lawyer, and start talking to your son." That night, after they left, I felt something unfamiliar settle into my chest. Not sorrow, not victory, not even peace. Clarity. I wasn't done yet, not by a long shot. Emily had taken enough. She didn't get to walk away with a slap on the wrist and a man on the side. The next morning, I called Colleen. "I want to move forward with the financial fraud claim," I said. "She falsified the purpose of the money. That's exploitation. We'll need documentation, paper trails." "I have them," I said. "Screenshots, receipts, call logs, everything." "And you're prepared for what that means? Public exposure, court appearances, possibly being painted as the bitter ex-mother-in-law?" "I'm prepared to be called worse," and I said. "She gambled with my pension, my trust, and my grandson's safety. This isn't just revenge. This is justice." Over the next few weeks, Marcus began to follow through. He filed for divorce. He moved back into the apartment he'd lived in before Emily, a small but clean 2-bedroom unit a few blocks from mine. Caleb adjusted slowly, asking every day why Mommy wasn't around as much, why she cried when she called. "She's going through some grown-up things," Marcus would say. I offered to help explain, but he said he needed to do that part himself. I respected that. Emily, meanwhile, did what Emily did best. She fought dirty. She tried to empty their joint bank account. Marcus had already frozen it. She showed up to his work to plead, tears smeared across her designer makeup. He recorded it, sent it straight to Colleen. Then she sent Shirley to my house. Shirley, who always looked like she'd been dipped in gold leaf, showed up on my doorstep in oversized sunglasses, feigning sympathy. "I just think this has all gotten so dramatic," she said. "Surely we can settle this like adults." I looked her square in the face. "Adults don't let children walk home alone so they can screw their personal trainer." She blinked, removed her glasses. "You've changed, Judith." I smiled. "No, I've remembered who I was before you all forgot." I closed the door in her face. By week 6, Emily was served court papers, fraud, endangerment, and a petition for supervised visitation rights until further notice. She exploded, online of course, posted vague quotes about betrayal, a picture of her crying on a beach, even tagged me in a rant calling me a toxic boomer witch. I printed it, added it to the file. Marcus apologized again and again for what he hadn't seen. I told him the truth. "You were in survival mode, but now you're in father mode. That's what matters." The court date was set for 2 months out. Caleb was settling in. He had therapy again, real, proper therapy. He laughed more, asked questions about the plants in my garden, even offered to help me weed. One afternoon, while planting marigolds, he asked, "Grandma, are you mad at Mommy?" I paused. "I'm mad at the choices she made, but I love you more than any anger I could ever feel." He nodded. "Thought about that. Daddy says you're like a warrior." I chuckled. "Tell him he's a little late figuring that out." The courthouse was cold, not in temperature, but in the way it stripped you of comfort. Polished stone, stale coffee in paper cups, the soft murmur of lives unraveling in real time. I sat beside Marcus, folder in my lap, every page organized down to the hour. I hadn't worn anything flashy, just my usual cardigan, neat slacks, and my wedding ring. Harold would have wanted to be here. He hated bullies more than I did. Emily arrived 10 minutes late. She wore a white blouse like armor, her hair swept up into a messy bun that said, "Victim to anyone who didn't know better." Shirley wasn't with her, which surprised me. Maybe even she knew this wasn't a fight she could win. When the judge called the case, Marcus stood tall. He'd shaved that morning. His tie was crooked, but his spine wasn't. Colleen handled most of the legal talk. She had a way of slicing through Emily's defense without ever raising her voice. She misrepresented the funds, Colleen said, pointing to bank transfers marked as tuition that led to luxury retailers and hotel stays. She lied about Caleb's educational needs to continue receiving money. That's not family support. That's calculated deception. Emily's lawyer, some young man with perfect teeth and no soul, tried to paint a different picture. "Your Honor, my client was under immense emotional strain. She may have used some of the funds for self-care, yes, but the intent was always to benefit the household." The judge tilted her head. Spa visits and Vegas trips are not household necessities. Then came the part that hurt most, the custody conversation. We submitted the photos of Caleb walking alone, the recordings, the school's testimony that he'd been pulled from therapy without reason, and the photo, the one of Emily kissing Darren in the gym parking lot. Emily's lawyer tried to object, claimed it was irrelevant. "It speaks to her priorities," as Colleen said, which were not her son. Emily's voice cracked for the first time all day. "I made a mistake, but I love my son." The judge didn't flinch. That may be true, but love without responsibility is just sentiment. By the end of it, the ruling was clear. Marcus would have full temporary custody. Emily would get supervised visits twice a week until she could prove stable employment, complete a parenting course, and undergo a psychological evaluation. The financial case was ongoing, but the fraud claim was moving forward. Fast. As we walked out, Marcus gripped my arm. "You did this," and he said, "You saved us." I shook my head. "No, I just lit the match. You had to walk through the fire." Life after court was quieter. Not peaceful. Not yet. But quiet in a way that let the healing begin. Caleb started second grade at a new school, smaller class sizes, actual enrichment programs, and a therapist on staff who greeted him by name. Marcus took a job with regular hours. No more night shifts. No more missed dinners. He moved into a slightly larger apartment with room for a desk and a bunk bed. Emily tried to fight the ruling, filed an appeal, started posting "Justice for Mothers" quotes on social media, even sent a bouquet of flowers to my house with a card that read, "We were family once. Think of Caleb." I thought of Caleb every day. That's why I kept going. The financial lawsuit progressed slowly. Emily dragged her feet, claimed she didn't have records, then claimed she lost access to her bank login. But Colleen was ruthless. Bit by bit, we built the case. One day I found something unexpected. While cleaning out the guest room closet, I discovered an old lockbox with Harold's documents. Inside was a CD, yes, a CD, from a credit union I didn't recognize. When I called them, they confirmed what I didn't expect. Harold had set up a small emergency fund. In my name. $18,000. Accruing quiet interest over the years. He never told me. Probably meant it as a surprise. Maybe even forgot about it in the way men sometimes do when their minds are full of responsibility. I cried when I saw the balance. Not because of the money, but because of the message. He still had my back. Even now. I used a portion of that fund to set up a legal trust in Caleb's name. It would only activate under one condition. Full custody had to remain with Marcus, and Caleb's care would need to meet specific education and safety benchmarks. That trust wasn't about punishing Emily. It was about protecting Caleb, even from her if needed. Then came the day I didn't expect. Emily called. I let it go to voicemail. Her voice was calm. Too calm. Judith, I know you won't believe me, but I want to make things right. I'm in therapy. I'm working again. I miss my son. I miss my family. Please, just talk to me. I saved the message, but I didn't return the call. Instead, I went into the kitchen, poured a glass of water, and stepped out into the garden. Caleb was kneeling near the basil plant, gently patting the soil. Can I plant something? He asked. Of course, I said, crouching beside him. What do you want to grow? He thought about it for a while. Tomatoes, like the ones Grandpa used to make into sauce. I smiled. Good choice. 3 months passed with no incident. Emily showed up to every supervised visitation with perfectly curled hair and oversized sunglasses, bringing overcompensating toys and tears that never quite seemed sincere. Caleb was polite but distant. Guarded. He'd hug her hello and goodbye, but never asked to stay longer. Never asked when she'd be coming home. He didn't cry afterward anymore either. The parenting counselor noted it in her reports. Emotional detachment may be a protective response. The child is learning to withhold vulnerability. That killed me more than anything Emily ever did. I wanted to hate her. I wanted to forget her, but I couldn't. Because Caleb still loved her in that complicated way children do, even when they don't feel safe. Even when the love costs them pieces of their heart. Still, I stayed firm. Colleen called one Friday morning with news. Emily's legal team just offered a settlement, she said. My stomach dropped. What kind of settlement? She's willing to pay partial restitution, about $25,000, but only if you drop the fraud case. I laughed. She stole over $70,000 in 2 years. Where's the rest? She says she doesn't have it, says she's broke. She's not, I said. I saw her tagged in a photo 2 days ago. Rooftop brunch, holding a glass of champagne and wearing what looked like another pair of $600 sunglasses. Then we don't settle, Colleen said, almost proud. We go to court. I hesitated. What happens if she declares bankruptcy? You won't see a cent, Colleen replied. But the fraud charge stays on her record. And that matters, especially for future custody petitions. I didn't care about the money anymore. I wanted the paper trail. I wanted the world to know that kindness wasn't the same as gullibility. That just because a woman wore pearls and called herself a mother didn't mean she acted like one. Then, one night, Marcus called me in a panic. She came to the apartment, he said, breathless. She wasn't supposed to. It wasn't her night. She just showed up, screaming, begging to see Caleb. My body went cold. Was Caleb there? No, he was with me. We were at the park. What happened? I called the cops. I have the doorbell camera footage. She was pounding on the door, Judith, crying, saying I ruined her life. She did that herself. He sighed. They let her go with a warning, but they filed an incident report. That's enough for the judge, I said, and that's a violation of the visitation order. I know, he replied, quieter now. I just didn't expect her to unravel this fast. I did. Because Emily wasn't sorry. Emily was cornered. And when people like her are cornered, they don't apologize. They lash out. They flail. They implode. The next week, I picked Caleb up from school. He climbed into the back seat and buckled in with the kind of tired that only kids with too many feelings carried. I saw Mommy today, he said, looking out the window. I froze. Where? She was across the street when I came out. She didn't say anything, just watched. I gripped the steering wheel so tight my knuckles whitened. Did you tell your teacher? He shook his head. I didn't know if I was supposed to. You always tell a grown-up if that happens, okay? Always. He nodded, small and solemn. I reported the sighting. Colleen filed an emergency motion to suspend Emily's visits. We had the court hearing expedited. Emily showed up in tears again. Her lawyer looked defeated. This isn't what I wanted, she sobbed in front of the judge. I'm just a mother who misses her child. The judge didn't blink. Missing your child does not excuse violating court orders, appearing unannounced at private residences, or loitering outside a school. Supervised visits are suspended until further evaluation. Emily burst into sobs. No makeup this time. No perfect bun. Just panic. The bailiff had to escort her out. After that, things calmed. For real this time. Marcus filed for permanent sole custody, and with Emily's violations, it looked more than likely he'd get it. Caleb flourished. He joined a little soccer team at school. He made a new friend named Luis who had a pet lizard and a love for gardening. They came over every weekend to help me in the backyard. Your grandson has a good heart, Luis's mother said one day. He's very protective. He was. He always had been. Even when it was his own little heart he was guarding. I started teaching him about budgeting. Gave him a piggy bank. Taught him how to plant tomatoes and basil and how to roast them with just the right touch of salt. Some days he still asked about Emily. And I never lied. Your mom is trying to figure some things out, I'd say. And when he asked why she left, she forgot what it means to take care of the people you love. But we're hoping she remembers. He accepted that. Kids are wise in ways adults forget to be. One evening, Marcus and I sat on the porch watching Caleb chase fireflies. He had a mason jar with holes in the lid and dirt on his knees. His laugh echoed across the yard like wind chimes. Marcus turned to me, quiet. I kept trying to find the words to say thank you, he said, but none of them feel big enough. You're a father now, I replied. That's the thank you. He smiled, eyes misting. I lost myself for a long time. You found yourself in your son, I said. It's the best way to come back. The official paperwork arrived on a rainy Tuesday morning. How poetic, I thought, as I slid the envelope open with Harold's old letter opener. Marcus now had full legal custody of Caleb. The judge had granted his petition without requiring a second hearing, citing a consistent pattern of neglect, deceit, and endangerment on Emily's part. No visitation. No shared holidays. Not until a formal review in 1 year, and even that came with conditions so steep, I doubted Emily would ever meet them. I didn't dance. I didn't pour champagne. Instead, I sat at the kitchen table with a hot cup of tea and cried. Not for Emily, but for the version of me who'd believed love meant sacrifice. That generosity didn't need boundaries. That motherhood meant tolerating anything as long as the family stayed intact. That woman was gone. In her place sat someone older, sharper, but still soft where it mattered. Emily moved out of state a month later. No warning, no goodbye. Shirley sent a text, some passive-aggressive nonsense about how life has a way of circling back. I blocked her number. The fraud case officially closed with a partial default judgment. Emily never showed up to the final hearing. The court ruled in my favor, $71,200 in damages plus interest. Colleen said collecting might be impossible unless Emily somehow stumbled into wealth again. I didn't care. The judgment wasn't about getting the money back. It was about the truth being written down in ink, stamped by a court, filed forever in a drawer Emily couldn't burn. 6 months later, Caleb started calling my house home. It happened casually, like all the best things do. He was eating a grilled cheese on the porch when Marcus asked if he wanted to stop by Mom's place later. Caleb looked confused. But we're already at Grandma's house. Marcus chuckled. Yeah, but I meant... No, Caleb said. This is the real house. With the plants and the cookies. I pretended not to hear, but my heart grew 3 sizes that day. The garden thrived. Caleb planted carrots, badly at first, but he learned. Tomatoes, too. Basil. A lemon tree we named Harold Jr. He loved watering Harold Jr., even though the poor thing barely grew 2 inches. I think he's shy, Caleb said. I think he just needs time, I replied. That summer, we made our own pasta sauce. Caleb insisted on labeling the jars. In thick black marker, he wrote, Caleb's sauce. Do not eat unless you are nice. I kept one jar on the windowsill. Still do. One Sunday afternoon, Marcus and I took Caleb to the beach. We hadn't done that in years. It was cool and windy, but he didn't care. He raced across the sand like it was his birthright, chasing seagulls and laughing so hard he fell. Marcus leaned beside me, shoes buried in the dunes. He's going to be okay, he said. Of course he is, I replied. I still feel guilty sometimes. I turned to him. Then do better. Every day. That's what the guilt is for, not punishment. Fuel. He nodded. I'm trying. I really am. I know, I said. And he does too. I never stopped budgeting. I still lived modestly. I still clipped coupons and brewed my own tea instead of buying it fancy from those overpriced shops. But there was a power in knowing I had taken back control, not just of my money, but of my place in this family. I wasn't the old bat with the checkbook. I was the backbone, the protector, the quiet force no one noticed until she rose. A year after the final ruling, I got a card in the mail, no return address. But the handwriting was familiar. Emily. Inside was a single sentence. You won. I hope it was worth it. I stared at it for a long time. Then I tore it in half and fed it to the compost bin. Because Emily was wrong. This wasn't about winning. It was about reclaiming my dignity, my worth, my legacy, my grandson. Later that evening, Caleb curled up beside me on the couch holding a pillow shaped like a turtle. Grandma. Yes, sweet pea? When I grow up, can I still live near you? I smiled and brushed the hair from his eyes. I'd like that very much. He nodded and fell asleep on my shoulder, just like Marcus used to. The rain tapped gently on the window. And for the first time in years, I knew this house was mine again. This peace was earned. And my story wasn't one of being used. It was one of being unbroken.